See, it's the rat's life for us, little Remy. We don't cook food, let alone where we don't go. That's life for us, little Remy. We feast where the grime, the fungus, and bacteria grow. Grab a menu and follow me. There's a whole buffet that I'd like you to see. So Remy, don't look so gloomy. This is your duty to grow. The rat's way of life is the way to go. Over the course of 2020, TikTok became my favorite platform for media consumption, and the sheer number of hours I spent on the app bears that out. In terms of overall time, YouTube probably has it beat, but that's only because I can't scroll my For You page while washing dishes or making pivot tables. To a lot of folks my age and older, TikTok is most closely associated with what is colloquially known as straight TikTok, a bunch of generically attractive young folk dancing and thirst trapping, and that's about it. But the platform is so enormous and its algorithm so brilliant that if you don't want any part of that, you don't have to. Of the literally thousands of TikToks I've watched, fewer than 10% have involved dancing of any kind, and I would say fewer than 10, the number, not percentage, were actually just punk-ass kids trying to show me their moves or whatever. TikTok realized almost immediately that even though I may be a straight white cis male, my true place is on bisexual woman and/or non-binary TikTok. Well, this may not be great for TikTok's advertisers, whose money has been taken to show me ads for women's clothing and products to improve all of that lesbian sex they think I'm having. Then most recently, how to take Plan B to address the straight sex they think I'm receiving. But it's fantastic for me and I feel very comfortable there. And it was within one of the various alt TikTok communities full of interesting and incredibly creative and talented people that an idea was born, built, and then absolutely blown up, eventually breaking off from the platform entirely and becoming its own unexpectedly enjoyable experience. Hello, by the way, and welcome to the Week Air Review. You can call me Elder TikToker. And today I am talking about Ratatouille, the TikTok musical. On a base level, Ratatouille the TikTok musical is exactly what it sounds like, a musical version of the beloved Pixar film that came from TikTok. It was the inadvertent brainchild of an elementary school teacher and self-described Disney-loving Broadway fan, Emily Jacobson, who just made a quick and silly little ditty about Remy the Ratatouille, the rat of all my dreams. After reading about how the Disney theme park ride based on the film was being further delayed and the trip that she's been wanting to take to Disney World will be further postponed. She added some effects and put it on TikTok, and it caught on, eventually catching the eye of composer Daniel Mertzleft, who took that song to new heights, adding music and extra layers of vocals as well as stage directions for the song that would be the Act 2 finale of a theoretical musical. And it ended with a joke that became some sort of promise, coming to Broadway 2021. And from there, TikTok, the communal entity, did what TikTok does, and hundreds of musicians, singers, actors, choreographers, etc., from all over the gosh damn world came together and posted their own ideas for songs and dances, offering up hashtag content that even more folks would then stitch and duet and repurpose and on and on. And I saw some of this as it was happening. Although I did not see Jacobson's initial TikTok nor Mertzleft's follow-up, more than a few of the videos that followed and some that ended up in the final thing hit my For You page. And it was genuinely awesome to see the way that folks were jumping onto this trend. This is fundamentally what makes TikTok so special. Can you imagine any other platform being able to facilitate something like this? Absolutely not. And while the hashtag Ratatouille musical trend faded away like everything else, something was brewing behind the scenes. A charity event where 10 of these songs made by these creators was being turned into a 50-ish minute production, professionally scored and starring a mind-bogglingly celebrated group of actors, with a supporting cast ranging from American Idol runner-up Adam Lambert and Whose Line's Wayne Brady to Hadestown's Andre DeShields, and the only age-appropriate person to ever play Evan Hansen on Broadway, Andrew Andrew Barth Feldman. Remy himself is played by Titus Burgess, who I first saw in Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, but came to prominence by, among other things, originating parts in Jersey Boys and The Little Mermaid's Broadway adaptation. Truly, a stacked event. And I was curious. Look, I'm pretty cynical about things like this. It's not the first time that some organization has attempted to capitalize on a social media trend, and it rarely works out well because the suits who make decisions never really understand what it is they're a part of or why. They just see engagement and then dollar signs. But the compressed timeline and fact that Disney's creative meat grinder wasn't actually involved gave me some hope that they didn't have enough time to turn it into a soulless husk of what it once was. Though what actually convinced me to just bite the bullet and check it out was that the proceeds would be going to support the Actors Fund, a nearly 140-year-old organization that fosters stability and resiliency and provides a safety net for performing arts and entertainment professionals over their lifespan. In a country where the public safety net becomes ever more frayed, such a thing is critical in the best of times. And now it is needed more than ever, because no industry has been decimated by the COVID-19 pandemic quite like the performing arts. A friend of mine works as a theatrical designer here in New York City and has been out of work since March, with no serious prospects of a return until maybe May? The end of which is when smaller theaters are planning to reopen, at least until we find out that actually the United States of America still isn't ready for that, which at the rate at which we're currently vaccinating people seems increasingly unlikely. But it's not like the theater world has frozen in all that time. Art always adapts, and this has been no different. And sure, it is impossible to replicate the feeling of being in a theater outside of possibly some type of high-fidelity VR that I have yet to experience. There's been something truly fascinating about getting to see the different ways that would-be productions have gone remote or new productions have been conceived at home. On the one side, you have straightforward Zoom readings, like one I saw with Julianne Moore and Caitlin Dever through the MCC Theater. The one act in question, Good as New, is set entirely in a car, meaning the two people looking straight forward most of the time, visual inherent to Zoom, actually kind of worked. On the exact opposite end, you've got something like the recording of Hamilton that hit Disney Plus earlier this year. But of course, that is not something that could be staged now, only released. But there are steps between them. For example, you have something like the Irish Repertory Theatre's productions, where performers have recorded themselves in front of green screens on computers or their phones, and they are then composited onto a proper background to help the audience, and then it will cut back and forth between the performances. And then just a few weeks ago, I watched a genuinely interesting production of A Christmas Carol done by Trinity Rep, which is Rhode Island's most notable regional theater company, and a place where I have seen many A Christmas Carol retelling. That one used a combination of Zoom calls, green screens, and even in-person, more traditionally cinematic footage of Scrooge alone at the theater, where he was being visited by spirits who were shown on a pile of televisions placed on stage. Sequences that required more intensive special effects or larger groups of people were represented by drawings, and it all blended together better than I anticipated. Ratatouille lies somewhere between these. While Burgess was recorded in a studio against a green screen, the rest of the actors worked from their homes. However, the musicians, a 20-piece all-women orchestra known as the Broadway Sinfonetta, played and were recorded together, and footage of their performances is mixed in with everyone else as appropriate. And there is also a dancing chorus who makes the occasional appearance, typically in a Tik-Tok-shaped boxes on the sides of the main singers. It is clear that a lot of effort went in behind the scenes, that even if it mostly looks quote-unquote amateur, it is a fundamentally professional production. I mean, There were apparently 130 people involved in the adaptation, working over a period of just 6 weeks, with the performers themselves only coming into it in the final 2. That is an unimaginable timeline in the theater world. And when you mix that with the complexity of remote work, there are going to be some issues. Like the fact that the actors, by and large, didn't learn their lines. And I get it. It's a lot, and Burgess especially has a lot of narration he needs to do between the big showstoppers. I don't expect him to have actually learned his lines. However, knowing he was in a studio in front of a green screen makes me wonder why he wasn't just on a regular teleprompter. He's always looking just to the side of the camera, like, seeing someone read cue cards in SNL, and it's strange to watch. And that's true about pretty much everyone to some degree. The major exception is Feldman, who, I think not coincidentally, is the only member of Gen Z in the cast. And because Feldman's off book, we can really feel the difference that makes. I mean, him as Linguini is perfect casting from a purely visual standpoint, but also he is going so much harder than everyone else and is unquestionably the MVP of the production. I was always ecstatic to see him on screen, and it was obvious that he felt the same way. I mean, dude even got himself a proper chef's uniform. To that point, one of the inherent complexities of a remote production with this kind of timeline is costuming. And it shows. The background dancers have matching outfits to wear, but the main cast does not. While Feldman has a proper outfit, as does Kevin Chamberlain, who appears briefly as the inspirational chef Gusteau, Ashley Park, who I saw in the immersive production K-pop a few years back, a show that is planned for Broadway later this year, and since I'm fairly sure that no Broadway theaters are able to handle immersion, I'm curious to see how it will change and what will be lost in translation. As Colette is wearing a white dress shirt that is a close enough facsimile, but Mary Testa as Chef Skinner didn't even bother with that, just donning a gray sweater. And you have the same thing with the rats. Burgess is wearing a mouse gray shirt, while Lambert has something a little more fashionable in gray and black, but then you see Wayne Brady in what can only be described as homeless chic with rat makeup and a hat with ears. And it creates a serious disconnect when they're all on screen. You can almost feel the relative excitement of the different cast members from the way that they put themselves together before getting on camera. And it definitely makes scenes with Feldman, Chamberlain, Brady, and even Park feel the liveliest of the bunch. But that's not to say that everyone else is slouching or unhappy to be there. Again, all of these people are so incredibly talented, and none of them are phoning this in, other than maybe that they were legitimately phoning it in. Haha, working from home joke. Good job, Alec. And yet, I think it's worth taking some time to talk about the subtitle of this particular performance, the Tik-Tok musical. And I want to do it by showing you one of my favorite TikToks ever. This was made by Bailey Humiston, and what she does is such a perfect reflection of what makes TikTok so beautiful. So,
Sid, lockdown starts soon, and I can't imagine 2 weeks without you. Maybe we could quarantine together. I'll love you forever, Sid. That's the problem. I think we could do it if we tried, if only to say you're mine.
I love it so much. Okay, so for some context, a clip from the TV show Skins, in which one character tells another that she will love him forever, and that's the problem, became a big trend on TikTok after being paired with Claro's absolute bop, Sophia. Humiston then recontextualized this into literally exactly what a TikTok musical was likely to be. And when you watch Feldman's performance of Anyone Can Cook reprise, you have got exactly that kind of raw, almost manic energy. Feldman puts more into those couple of minutes than exists in the entire rest of the show. You could call it overacting and be technically correct, but you would be missing the point so hard. It's not that he's overacting, it's that everyone else is underacting. He seems to be one of only 2 performers who really understands that he's in a TikTok musical and what that means, which makes sense because I've got no doubt that the guy spends some time on TikTok. Chamberlain also does it right, though perhaps by accident. There's a very specific sort of low-key self-awareness that a lot of the white-haired folk on my For You page have, and Chamberlain nails that. And perhaps the inconsistency is a failure of direction, or it could be an inevitable result of having mere days between someone being cast and then having to perform, but I think it's more basic than that. In the virtual red carpet that preceded the event, Burgess admitted to having only downloaded TikTok last week. And I get it. 41 is a bit old to be injecting Gen Z straight into one's veins, and maybe so is 29, but we're not reviewing me here, thank you very much. Been there, done that. But without it being there, he's just being Titus Burgess, and I'm never really going to complain about that because he is truly a joy to watch. But there's something missing in his performance that you get in the TikToks from which his words originated. And I guess that gets back to the soul of it all, right? Ratatouille, the TikTok musical, is so much more genuine than I expected. The earnestness on display here is wonderful, and I had a lovely time watching it the first go, and then bits and pieces of it again as I worked on this video. But when I was practicing The Rat's Way of Life for my dumb little intro, I mostly shied away from the professional version and stuck with Blake Rouse's original. Like, Rouse's music is not nearly as good, nor is his voice. But he commits to the silliness in a way that Lambert just doesn't. When folks were making these songs and dances and etc., they wanted to be a part of this big fun thing that was happening in this beautiful creative space on the internet for its own sake. There was no idea of what this would become, and if there had been, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as special. And kind of like the modern Disney itself, right? There's no magic in Disney anymore. Their whole shtick is to make the most cynically marketable product imaginable. Everything is big, glossy, and family-friendly, great by default, and rarely anything more. The fact that the entity allowed this performance to happen is not because they're good, but because Ratatouille is available now on Disney+, and hey, don't you want to go back and check out your favorite Pixar movie? And wouldn't you know it, there's a new Pixar film for you to stream while you're there. As this whole thing was happening, the US government included a new copyright enforcement system into the COVID relief bill, which created a copyright claims board that allows holders to more cheaply and efficiently go after folks who might want to, make a musical out of their work. And I'm quite sure that Disney was involved in its development because they've been involved in basically every bad expansion of copyright ever. Do you know why it takes so long for works to enter the public domain? Disney. Because they didn't want to lose control over Mickey Mouse, so every time he was set to enter the public domain, they spent millions of dollars making sure that the public domain just pushed a little bit further back. Calling a company built in large part on adapting public domain stories hypocritical isn't nearly strong enough. But even if Ratatouille the TikTok musical isn't quite as magical as #Ratatouille musical was, it is a real good thing that did real good. By the time the stream began on Friday evening, they had sold more than 120,000 tickets and raised more than $1 million for the Actors Fund, an amount that will only have gone up in the days since. And even if it wasn't enjoyable on its own terms, it would have been a clear success by that metric alone. But it is enjoyable, much more than I expected. I had a genuinely good time sitting in my bedroom watching these uber-talented folks in theirs singing songs that a bunch of uber-talented kids had made in theirs. It is so wild that this happened, and I don't think anything quite like it will or could or even should happen again. But I'm really glad that it did, and that I was there to be a part of it. 7.9 out of 10. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you particularly to my patrons, my mom, Hammer and Marco, Kat Saracata, Benjamin Schiff, Anthony Cole, Magnolia Denton, Elliot Fowler, Greg Lucina, Werner van Alphen, Liam Knipe, Kojo, Phil Bates, Willow, and I Am the Sword. If you like this video, that's great. If not, I don't care. If you want to see more, please subscribe. I hope to see you next week.